Good evening, Patrick here. Have Cheetah Will View, and it is Tuesday. It is the first show of the brand new week. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Eight Questions with. We are having a really fun October so far, and with our 31 days of October kicking off, we've already shared out three of our films, but now we get to do the other half, which is the interview part. And so we are kicking off the week with actor and screenwriter Rob Merritt. Um, I first saw him in a film called "You Should Have Killed Me." He absolutely stole his scene in that film. He also is very a prolific actor and writer, and he is one of the more deep actors I've met. He has quite a body of work um, as well. At home, he's at home either on the stage, in front of a camera, or writing it. You put him anywhere, and he's going to be comfortable. Hey, Joshua, how are you? Glad you're here. Glad you're here. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun today. Hi, V. Hopefully, you are feeling well. Glad you are here. I know it seems like a long time since I was here. It does. It seemed like I had a super long weekend, back to the three shows a week, and it feels like I have 4 days off. It sort of feels weird. Um, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Feel free to share us out. We'll be talking with Rob Merritt today. He's a excellent actor from Iowa. I was just mentioning how he is a prolific screenwriter. He's at home on the stage, and he loves to act in a lot of indie films. He did a movie that we've been talking about here. In fact, we're interviewing the cast. Everything we're going to be interviewing. Look who slipped in. Director Michael Menard just slipped on in. He is the director of You Should Have Killed Me, which featured Rob in a steam ceiling role as Jeeves. Um, we'll be talking with Rob about that. But when I asked him to interview and I started looking at his body of work, man, I just told him too. I told him right before we got on here that Michael's starting to remind me a little bit of Joe Lynch. Joe Lynch is one of my very favorite directors. I've spoken up on him many times here on the show. Joe Lynch is he gets some incredible talent. That's all I'm gonna say. He gets talent that you just don't think he can get for the level of his movies, but he gets it. He can go out there and get just about anybody he wants, and it feels that way with Michael. Now, Rob says that Michael and him have been friends for many years and done projects together, but it still feels like Joe Lynch. It's a Joe Lynch type of feel to it. We have Dylan Yeager, we have Damian Mancino next week. These are all really fine actors. And I just love the fact, the idea we can get them all together in one movie, and we get to see what's going to happen. We're going to talk about what's happening next for Rob because he's got a lot of cool projects on the fire right now, and he has to be a one man promo with all the works that he's all the movies and plays and screenplays he's writing. He's just when he's not acting, he's pushing the project that he's in. Like today, we'll be talking about "You Should Have Killed Me," which is actually doing very well, from what I understand. It's really hitting home for a lot of people. A lot of people seem to be discovering the film and really enjoying it. It's been talked about quite a bit in our little corner of the world, including Michael doing an interview with Katie from Popping the Popcorn. I've also reviewed the film. She has as well. It's just a very small slice of what's going on in the bigger picture with "You Should Have Killed Me." So we're very happy to have Rob here, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of good things. I watched about a quarter of his science fiction film called Amelia 2.0. I would have watched it all the way through but I am trying to, like hell, to finish my 31 days of Halloween. I'm reviewing a horror film every day for the month of October, and so I have to hurry up and do that before I catch up with myself. Well, I've done 3 so far. We did the Parker sessions. We've done Dying to Sleep Today, and see, I'm already lost as it is. And we did. Let me go tell you what we did. Oh my gosh, my brain is on overload. Okay. Oh, of course. Well, I think I just had a brain fart because I knew what it was. I just was trying to block it out of my. Not really. Uh, and I reviewed Doll Shark. Yeah, that's right. I reviewed. That was directed by. Was a movie by Mark Polonia, and I watched that for my day 2 of the 31 Days of Horror. Hey, I didn't say they all be winners, but I did happen to like Doll Shark. I actually liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I said I got to do something for fun, so that's what I did. Um, Hi New York Gal, how are you? How are you? Glad you're here. Glad you're here. While I get a chance before Rob gets here, let me break off what's going on in the calendar here on Eight Questions with, because we do have some fun coming up here. So tonight is Rob, of course, and he'll be here shortly. Tomorrow night we have actress Heather Harlow will be here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. She is currently busy filming, so she is all over the place, but she should be here tomorrow for at 8 o'clock. Thursday the 5th, we have YouTube creator Tracy Hutchins will be here. She runs the YouTube channel Tracy's and Chloe's Unboxing Beauty and More. That's right. I interview beauty channels. Why not? I like talking to creators. That's really what it is. I just like talking to creators. Um, they're a lot of fun. Uh, talking to fellow YouTube community members. Sometimes it's sort of nice to get out of the small circle. Sometimes you find yourself in as a tuber. Sometimes you find yourself. Well, I'm a beauty channel, so it's all I'm going to hang out with is just beauty or cruising or cats or movies. But it's sort of nice to be able to go and visit other people in various communities and say hello and see what they're up to. So we'll be talking with Tracy on Thursday at 8 o'clock. Okay, we had a show on the 7th with Hyde Raven Knight. But she will not be able to make it. But we are making lemons out of lemonade, and me and the Cheetah, we will be doing a watch party on Saturday at 3 p.m. I don't know what we're watching yet. I will make a banner for it, and it'll put it up. I can rest assured that it will be on Tubi, so everybody will be free to join along with us. That would be a lot of fun. I have an idea what we're doing, but we'll see. I have an idea. All right. So next Monday, the 9th, we have our second cast member from You Should Have Killed Me, and that will be Damian Mancino will be here with us at 8 o'clock on Monday. And I really like Damon quite a bit. He was the leading man. He played Monty, and You Should Have Killed Me. He's a real passionate guy, a real passionate artist. He's got his he's a good person. That's really and a good actor. And really happy to have him on here. Really looking forward to chopping it up with him and talking a little bit of Jersey and New York and stuff like that. Well, he also while he's also an actor, he's also done some MMA as well. So we'll talk to him about that. Um, Okay, everything he says about me is a lie too. Oh, you already know I'm going to be asking all about the craft table. We're going to be talking about the craft table because I heard whispers that the craft table was just peanut butter and jelly. That's just what I heard. My sources have told me that it was peanut butter and jelly on bread heels with day old bread. Hitchcock. It's like a Hitchcock. It was like an Alfred Hitchcock craft table. That's what I heard. That's what I'm going with. Uh, Hopefully you're feeling better, Josh. Hopefully you're feeling better. Thank you for tuning in and listening in. I appreciate that so much. So Damien will be here. Damien will be here on the 9th. On the 10th, we have film. We have film documentary filmmaker Patrick Boberg will be here with us. He's also done other films as well. We'll be talking to him about his documentary that he put on PBS. That's a history of the USS Iowa. I know, isn't that something? Isn't Iowa's everywhere, right? But we'll be talking to Patrick Boberg about his documentary about the battleship Iowa. This is really funny too, if you really think about it. It was it's a story about a ship called the USS Iowa, which is one of the states that's landlocked, right? You would think they would name battleships off the states with actual coastlines, like they could float out into the ocean and fight. But we got U.S. like Nebraska and Kansas and okay, Wisconsin, the Missouri, but the Missouri did have a river, so there you go. Um, all right, on the 11th, we'll be super excited to welcome in um, horror host Sam Gregula, Count Gregula. He will be here on the 11th at 8 o'clock. We're going to talk all things horror host related. So anybody that's interested in like Elvira or Swinguli or some of the other ones like Dr. Evil or Dr. Gangrene or anybody else that you can think of that's a horror host, that's been a horror host, come on in and we'll be talking to Count Gregula on the 11th. And on the 12th, we welcome in actress Donna Hamlin will be here with us on the 12th. And she is a verified screen queen. That girl has done a lot of cool horror films, including one that we're very interested in watching. In fact, we're going to go check see if it's on Tubi after this show called Hellcat's Revenge. You know that anything with a cat and a cat on there is happening. Though today I thought that Hellcat's Revenge, I thought that was going to be the cheetah on my ass because I found a copy of Beau is Afraid at the library, and I asked Peloton if he wanted to come downstairs and watch Beau is Afraid with me, and so cheetahs can bite really hard and they can scratch. Yeah, they can pinch your neck off a little bit. Um, so whatever you do around a wild cheetah, never mention A24 around a wild cheetah. Not a good idea. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on. We're working on the rest of the month. Just a reminder, I'll be reminding folks every day, all day, that we do the show is I will be taking November off. I am unplugging everything. I'm leaving some movies and stuff behind, some reviews. Oh, the doorbell just rang, so that means hey, Cos. All right, cool. All right. Domino's Pizza for the craft table. All right, we're gonna talk. We're gonna ask. Don't think we're not. All right, please help me welcome in our guest. One of the stars of the very fun movie You Should Have Killed Me. Please welcome our good friend Jeeves, aka Rob Merritt. Here we go.
Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Good, good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. I didn't realize you guys had started the show without me.
I always start the show 15 minutes beforehand, so we get a little crowd coming in there, and I can tell what's coming up the calendar, and I can brag up on the guests. So we're bragging you up, and we're also going to be talking about craft tables, craft services. We heard rumors on You Should Have Killed Me that you guys got fed peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and you had to share a single plastic knife with that. We just want to hear from you, the talent. What was it like? What was the craft table really like?
Michael told me I wasn't supposed to talk about that. He was very forceful about that.
You know what? Just think about this, man. Just think of this as like a low rent TMZ. You can share.
That never goes well for the celebrities who share with TMZ. It never ever comes out well for them.
It never does it?
No,
Uh,
no, like don't talk to TMZ. You will never, ever, ever gain anything from talking to TMZ.
um, do you ever watch that show? Have you ever seen it? I mean,
Oh, I used to
what
shoot it back in the yeah, like they aired it like I forget if it was KCRG, or which channel it was, but they'd show it at like 11 or 11:30, and it always amazed me how incredibly obnoxious the journalists on that show would be. I mean, the way that they would like walk up to they'd see a celebrity at the airport and they would just ask them the most personal and intrusive questions like they're best buddies, and you could tell the celebrities looking at them like, I have no idea who you are, why are you asking me this, but I realize I have to play this stupid game with you because you're TMZ. um, it always was just really awkward and embarrassing. I really did not like that show at all.
it was really funny. Is I grew up in LA in Southern California, and when I was there, Harvey Levin, he was actually a pretty respected figure. He was on the local news. He was doing his legal segment, and then he was doing Consumer Reports. He was actually legit. He was actually, and and then somewhere down the line, he decided he wanted to get into Hollywood, and so and that was the way he did it. He broke in. He threw away all his respectability, and he basically started a tabloid. And you got all those people in there, and you're right. Most of their interviews are always ambushed at the airport.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I hate the show myself. I think it's disgusting. I just like there's no respect for any of those people who operate it. Very disappointed in Levin because, like I said, he used to be a pretty potent force. When if a contractor was screwing over somebody or a consumer alert, he was there to either talk to the shading contractor or give alerts to products and stuff. He actually was legitimate, and it was really a shame to see that he basically sold himself out for fame. I was
Hmm.
like, desperate, and he desperately wanted to be in the movies, and no one ever cast him. No one ever was going to ever use him. So I think he started it as a way to strike back. Um, Terrible, terrible, terrible show. Let's see. Michael has already prepped us on Rob. All right. He mentioned he fed you guys Domino's. That's pretty good.
He
That's
mentioned, I'm sorry, he said what?
he fed you Domino's.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, you can't ever go wrong feeding the cast pizza. Well, I mean, you could, I guess, if you ordered the wrong toppings, but as a general rule, it's a pretty safe bet.
What's been your most fun craft table? What's
Oh
the one
wow.
craft table that you remember the most? Like if you guys want to take another hour to do more setup, that's fine with me. That type of deal.
You know, I mean, I'm not like a big crafts table person, so I don't really have any like big memories of it. I'm so when I'm on set, a lot of times I don't like to stop to eat. That's just how my brain works. So like if we stop, I'll eat something just as like okay, I guess technically I need nourishment, but like I'm just ready to like I would rather just like keep going. Not the healthiest attitude in the world. I'm fully aware of that, but yeah, I'm much more of a. Now I will say that I did a film called The Cross just this past spring, and the director of that film, MG White, is he is an accomplished chef, and he would often the movie centered around this French family that was they opened a French restaurant back in the 20s in Iowa, and so a lot of times both for props in the film because it took place in the restaurant and they'd have like different things that the family was eating, but also sometimes just as a gift for the cast. Dr. White would bring in various kinds of food for us, and so that was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit fascinated by it too. Like sometimes you hear about some really great tables, and a lot of times they say like a way to an army is through a stomach. An army
Mhm.
marches through a stomach, and I was just thinking to myself, it's the same thing for a film crew. It's like they probably operate the better with the better food and the better than not. It's like
Oh,
they're more.
absolutely, absolutely. I just, you know how there's that stereotype where they say that that white people can't handle spicy food, that white people eat bland stuff. I'm why that stereotype exists.
Oh,
That's
me
my
too.
fault. I did that.
Yeah, I'm like that. Yeah, yeah. When someone comes up there with a pepper, I'm just like, I'm out. I'm like, no,
Yeah, I
I'm
don't like food that hurts me. That's my thing.
mm-mm.
I'm like, I'd like my food to be enjoyable. I don't want it to cause me physical agony.
In fact, I heard. I go to Taco Bell. I go to Taco Bell, and as soon as they hear my voice, they say the white boy's here, no sauce in the bag. That's how well known I am for not eating sauce.
No, it's
Um,
true. I'm the same way.
yeah. All right. So let's. So I looked at. I came to you. You came to my attention when I watched the film. You should have killed me. And what a fun movie that was. And you played Jeeves. And tell us a little bit about Jeeves. Tell us when you got the script and you saw the part of Jeeves, and you were talking with Michael about it. How did you see Jeeves? And
Well,
what?
it actually wasn't the first time I'd seen the character. There's another screenplay Michael has written that he has yet to film, but that one also had the character of Jeeves in it, and although he played a much bigger role in that one. And I read it, and I really liked the character. And so then when Michael was doing "He Should Have Killed Me" and he had Jeeves in it again, I looked at it and I what I liked about the idea of a character like that was that nobody really knows. He kind of exists on the periphery of the film. He's not integral to the plot, and yet whenever he shows up, he causes something to happen. And I liked the idea of, well, why is this guy employed by both sides as a cleanup person? Like, what kind of reputation does he have, and what kinds of things has he done in the past in order for everybody to be like, okay, if we have a problem or if we need to get rid of something or we need to fix something, you go to that guy. And so I very much played with that. And the other thing was that his name is Jeeves, which, a British term for like a servant and assistant. And so I remember, I mean, I practiced the role both ways. I was learning it just in my regular voice, but I found that if I made the character like kind of this, if he spoke in like kind of a snooty British way, it actually made him way funnier. And so, I got to set and I asked Michael if that was okay. And he was like, well, can you maintain that for the whole shoot? And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so, yeah, he was good with it. And so we made that happen. And yeah, it was fun. It was a fun character to play. And I wasn't on set much. I mean, Jeeves is not a major character, but whenever I was there, it was a really, really fun thing to do. So,
Oh my God.
big thanks to Michael for trusting me to take Jeeves in that direction because I had a lot of fun with it.
I thought the character of Jeeves. I thought everybody in the movie actually just stands out. You had Raymond, you have Jeeves, you had Kevin and Dylan playing the stoners. I just those guys. I told Michael too. I said, you need to come back. I didn't even know this until you just mentioned it. I did not know there was another script with Jeeves in it because I was talking to Michael and I was sitting there going like, you got to come up with another short story that Jeeves and the Stoners come together and they do a mission for Ed.
I can't
For
remember the
Rosie
name of
and
it,
for
but it's a
Raven.
feature. It's a feature-length script that Michael wrote, and the concept of it is these two guys who get themselves into a whole bunch of trouble, and they're meeting with Jeeves in a restaurant, and Jeeves is like walking them through what is it exactly you did, and then figuring out based on what they tell him how to deal with the situation. And I thought it was really fun. I liked the idea of this guy who, he kind of reminded me of like kind of like the wolf from Pulp Fiction or the cleanup crew that's in John Wick. That's
That's
funny
what I
because they
thought.
never explain these guys. They never explain where they came from or how they know what to do. They just show up and they take care of everything. And you're like, I want to know more about those guys. So yeah, it was fun to go down that path with Jeeves.
Yeah, that's what I thought of when I saw Jeeves, his mannerisms. I immediately thought of John Wick and going like, this guy would be right at home in that world. He could be standing to David Patrick Henry or Kelly, and the cleaning crew. And how many reservations do you need, sir? I can just see
Yeah,
that happening. But it was really fun, though. It was a lot of fun. Um, but you've done so much more than this. Once I started digging a little bit, and all of a sudden it's like, because I saw you at that, and I'm going like, man, this guy's funny. He's a comedian. He's like, it's absolutely, he's absolutely lit. As for that, and then I started digging. When we
Did you just
started
say
doing
I was
stuff.
lit?
Yeah,
You
you
okay,
you were
okay.
on fire. You're on fire. Oh yeah, I was really impressed. I was like, wow, this guy is really deep. It's like,
Well, I
I was
appreciate that.
like,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, I was like, wow. It's like, um, because the movie lends itself to comedy. It's a comedic, but it has a little steel to it too. That's what I do appreciate that. You can't
Well,
have a
that's
gangster.
something that I've like found a lot of times on movies is any whether it's something that I've written or whether it's something that I'm in, it's that if it's really really heavy subject matter or serious, any opportunity you have to introduce humor is like it's like fresh air to an audience. I mean, it can be overdone. You don't want to do that, but every once in a while, like if there's a place where simply the delivery of a line or like the approach, if you can, in the middle of all of this big heavy stuff, you can find a place to make things just a little bit lighter, even for just a moment, it's a good way to go. And so I
I,
look for that whenever I can.
I agree. I do, and that's why when you come out there and you come outside and you don't have to be crass. Made me
Yeah.
laugh. I laughed my ass off at that line. I thought that
I
was
give Michael credit. He let me improvise that line. I just dropped that one. And I actually watched your podcast with Michael, and Michael was talking about how he watched that movie with a friend of his, and the friend was like, yeah, that guy, I don't think he even realizes that he just insulted the main character by saying that. I don't think he understands what crass means. And I was like, no, dude, I understood exactly what crass means, and I did in fact insult Damien with that. So I was like, no, that was a completely intentional, but it was a very polite diss. It was a very polite and proper "you're being an idiot" diss, because that's what Jeeves would do.
yes, I agreed. I would agree totally what Jeeves would do. Um, and it's sort of cool too. I like the idea that there was, and again now I can understand this, but there was just a hint, like you said, like what is he doing? What's he here for? But you know what? But you also get the hint of what he's capable of.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and the if Raymond said a couple of words here and there, this whole movie turns out a whole different way. Because you have a feeling that Jeeves is a very good operator.
Well,
Um,
there's that whole fight sequence earlier in the film with those guys in the bar, and they're very good fighters. And then at the end, when they go out to the parking lot, all that Jeeves was told to do was, hey, just keep those guys here. And when they go out to the parking lot, Jeeves has that dude like just down on the trunk, hasn't broken a sweat, hasn't even like unbuttoned his tie, and yet he did something to take this dude who we've already seen is a pretty good fighter and has completely immobilized him. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Chief's got some tricks.
uh, do you like playing action heroes? I mean, action heroes. Is that something you like doing? I mean, have you done a lot of it in your roles? Because
I wouldn't say I've done a lot of it. I do enjoy taking on physical challenges, whether it's on stage or in film. And I know a number of people who are very talented fight choreographers, and I've certainly gotten a chance to do some cool. Like it's nice to push yourself, um, even if sometimes it's not the smartest thing to do when you're like over 40 and you're like, hey, I'm going to get hit by a car. And it's like there's this little thing in your brain that's like, maybe I shouldn't do that. I did a movie called Nunsmack like a decade ago. I had to get hit by a car, and I like got hit by it like 5 times. Like
oh,
jump up and roll off the hood and all that. And at one point, and my wife after I got home was like, you're not 25, right? You know that you probably it's never a good idea to get hit by a car, much less get hit by one multiple times, much less do it when you're not a spring chicken anymore. And I was like, I know, give me the ice pack.
well, what did you look like the next day?
Oh, I looked
Awesome.
fine. I didn't hit my face at all. You wouldn't want to see the rest of me, but
Yeah,
my
that's what
face
I
was
said. Were
fine.
you, were you black and blue on your body afterwards?
I mean, it's I not terribly, because you do learn. I mean, that, like I mentioned, I know a lot of people who do stage combat, stage choreography, and you learn things like how to take a fall, how to take, and to be clear, I wasn't getting hit by a car at full speed. I mean, there's tricks you do, and there's ways that you know how to hit. But that said, you're just really sore. You run around and do stuff like that, you'll feel it the next day.
Definitely, definitely. Um, well, how do you like? Have you always been in Iowa? Are you born? Are you a native Iowan?
My background's weird, dude. I was born in Pittsburgh. I lived in Pennsylvania till I was almost like outside of Philadelphia till I was almost 10. And then my family moved to Iowa. And I was here. I went to the University of Iowa for theater and for journalism. And then I moved to New York for a while. I lived there, and then I came back to Iowa. And through it all, I've been very active in theater, like ever since I was in high school. Because it's really only been in like the last decade or so that technology has advanced to the point that it's a lot easier to make an independent film now than it used to be. It used to be, if you look at movies that people made back in the 90s or the mid 2000s, they're usually shot on a really cheap VHS camera, and they don't look good at all. Like you could tell when a movie was low budget. And now it's like there's a lot more opportunities to act on film. And so although I started in theater, as more of those opportunities started opening up, even here in Iowa, I kind of jumped on them. I remember the Iowa film scene kind of, there was a period of time in the mid to late 2000s where Iowa had a film tax credit. And so for a while there, we were getting some really cool productions coming in. We had the final season film here with Sean Astin and Powers Booth and Rachel Lee Cook. And there was I mean, there was a bunch of people coming here, a bunch of, and it was exciting. It was an exciting time, and there were people who were getting credit. We were building up an entire ecosystem of people who were trained in all different crew roles and things like that. And then, unfortunately, that program went away, and now you see other states who are benefiting from it, while we don't. But there were a lot of people who got enough of a taste for film during that time that they were like, you know what, we want to keep the Iowa film scene going, even if we don't have that credit anymore. And so there have been a lot of projects, and I've been lucky enough to find my way into a few of them. And so I keep hoping that one day the Iowa film scene will return to what it was. But there's already a lot of really good opportunities, and so I'm happy to do anything that I can to keep helping those opportunities occur.
I've been talking to a lot of people from Ohio, and I've discovered how rich Ohio is. As far as talent. I mean, there's a lot going on in Ohio. But lately, I've been over here with talking to folks in Iowa, and I talked to a director named Tim Conray. He did a movie called Death to Metal, and that was my first exposure to the Iowa filmmakers. And I was really impressed. It's a really fun movie, totally fun movie. And then I met Michael, and then I met you, and I'm going to meet Damon. I know he's from New Jersey, but he'll talk about working in Iowa. And then we got Dylan, and so I'm looking forward to meeting more and more people. I believe the Field of Dreams, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that filmed in Iowa
It
too?
was. It was filmed in Dyersville, and actually, that baseball diamond, is still there. They actually have been
Very
having a
cool.
major league game take place there the last couple of years. They did a whole big thing where Kevin Costner came back. But yeah, that was that's still probably one of the best known films to come out of Iowa, and that was in, I think, 1989. But yeah, in fact, it was kind of a running joke for a while. That was like, there are there are movies about Iowa that don't have to involve baseball or farms. Like there's other stuff here, but there's so many movies about those two things that come out of this state.
Our friend Dell mentioned. I want to say hi to our horror tuber of the month friend. Don is here. Night Owl Movie Talk. Glad you're here. And Dell mentions that he's heard some of the toughest acting for a lot of performers is acting like they don't know when they're about to get hit by something that they know is going to hurt. Um, yeah, I guess that's if you're going to get hit by a car, it's like you can't help but tense up for it because you know it's coming and it's not going to feel good. So, but I've also known too. There's a couple of movies. One called a movie from the '70s, um, called The Sting, and it had Robert Redford and Paul Newman in it.
Yeah,
And there's a scene where a beautiful woman's walking down the street, and they pass each other, and she's going to go ahead and kill. I think she's going to kill Robert Redford, and then Paul Newman comes out and shoots her, and she didn't know that he was going to do that. And he came out there and popped her, and she was like, her face, the look on her face was so realistic. They used it in the film. They didn't tell her that they were going to come in there and kill her character like that. And so the look that she had on the face when that gun pointed at her was the real deal. Um, so so back to Iowa.
Mhm.
Now you mentioned how it was coming back, but let's talk about how you've been doing more than your part to bring it back. You've written some great screenplays. I want to talk a little bit about Amelia 2.0 because science fiction is really hard to do. Independent science fiction is really hard to do. Um, so talk to us about what came first for you in your creative journey? Were you a writer first, screenwriter first? Did you act first in front of the camera, or were you a theater? Because I heard you mention journalism, so you've been writing before
Yeah.
you started writing. You started writing way when you're well, how old were you when you started writing?
I was a little kid. I remember when I was like about 5 or 6, I told my dad that I wanted to be a writer. And even back then, my dad was like, well, if you want to be a writer, you should go into journalism because that's the only way that you're going to be able to do that and have like a steady income. And so, ironically, when I went to the University of Iowa, I double majored in theater and in journalism. And the journalism one I thought was the safe one because I was like, well, we all know newspapers are not going anywhere. Whereas theater is like the risky one. I might not have a job for long if I go there. So the irony of that is not lost on me. But I mean, as far as which one came first, I really don't know. I mean, I guess I've always felt like I'm a storyteller, and I've just found different avenues tell stories, whether it's portraying somebody in a film or on stage, or whether it's writing a screenplay or writing an article or making a video. I mean, I've really gotten heavily into video editing because that's a fantastic way to tell a story. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It feels like they're all kind of fused together in some weird mutant thing inside my brain. I don't know. I don't pretend to know which one kicked it all off, but I have inflicted all of them on the world in equally terrible measure.
I was gonna say if he said the writing came first, and did you write? Did you go to high school? Were you like on the school paper?
Yeah, I was. That's the thing. I was editor of my school paper at Jefferson High School, but I also was doing plays at Jefferson High School, and I was, and I was like writing. I was writing comic books when I was in high school and giving them to friends, and so yeah, I my whole thing is that I never really, I've never understood people who say that they're bored because I never have enough time in the day for all the different things that I want to do. I have way more interests and hobbies than I have time for. So I'm always like running around trying to do a bunch of different stuff. And so, yeah, even back then, like I had all these different interests and I was kind of pursuing all of them at the same time.
Um, so I take it for to become the creative writer, you must have read when you were younger as
Oh, yeah,
well. So,
all the time.
who are some of your like as far as like writing for Amelia 2.0 or the Summerland project? What were some of the writers that you enjoyed growing up with? What were some of the writers that maybe influenced you a little bit?
Well, I mean, okay, so those are like two different questions because there are definitely writers that influenced me growing up, but the influences behind Amelia 2.0 were completely different. Amelia 2.0 came from a desire to, it wasn't even a desire to write a science fiction story. It was, I wanted to write something about if somebody that you love uh, dies, and then you have the opportunity to bring them back but they don't come back the same, would you still do it? And I was trying to think of how I would tell that story, and for the longest time I was thinking it would have to be a ghost story, something like that. And then I was reading about there were two things I came across at the same time. One of them was a bunch of videos about they were making um, they were making robots in Japan and they're like freakishly realistic even then, and they've gotten way more since then, but like these humanoid robots that were moving in ways that were like whoa, okay, that's a little unsettling. um, and then there was a really interesting story. And I don't even know if this, and I've tried to follow up on it, and I've never found an example of this thing actually getting made. But there was a guy who was trying to make, and it was all the tabloid news were covering this. I'm sure TMZ would have been all over it. They were making this thing called Roxy with like 3 X's in her name, and Roxy was supposed to be the first ever. It was like a love doll, but it was interactive, and it was a robot driven by a computer that would learn from you and say all these things. And of course, every media outlet out there just made fun of this guy. And they did articles on it and talked about how freakish this thing looked and all that. But there was one interview that somebody had with him, and they asked him, why did you want to make a sex robot? And his answer was really interesting. He said, well, I didn't want to make a sex robot. What I wanted to do was, a really good friend of mine died on 9/11, and it always haunted me that I was never going to be able to see that friend again, never going to be able to introduce him to anybody. And then it occurred to me, what if, as a grieving tool, what if you could make something that like looked like a person that you loved and was programmed to act like them, and it would almost be like a grieving tool to help you let them go. And I was like, huh, that's an interesting thought. And he said that's what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I couldn't get funding for that. But the porn industry, they had lots of funding. So I was like, fine, I'll make what they want in order to fund what I want to do.
Right.
And so I have no idea whatever happened with that guy, but I was intrigued by that idea. I was like, what if you could build a version of someone? And then I started reading up on like the theories. Like Ray Kurzweil has all these theories about the singularity and about um, uploading the human consciousness into an artificial body or an artificial. And I just, the more that I read about it, and they were talking about, this is really not that science fictiony. That we are like 20, maybe 30 years away from having a computer that is powerful enough to emulate the human brain. And that the human brain, it's essential. It's basically all a bunch of electrical impulses, billions and billions of neurons that are all talking to one another in a network that is beyond our understanding. But if you could figure out how to copy the impulse, like all of those neurons, even if you didn't understand how they work together, but you figured out how to copy them perfectly, and then at the same time you built a body that matched, like physically, you like used the latest technology to make a body that is almost indistinguishable from an actual human body unless you get really close to it, and you put those things together. Well, now you start opening a question of, well, what is it you're making? Is that actually the person? Is it a copy of them? What happens? And it just kind of clicked. I was like, that story that I wanted to tell about bringing someone back, but it not being quite the same, this would be the way to do it. And so I started creating this story about this company that wants to do that. They want to make the first ever artificial human. Um, and they're looking for the right person to do this project with. And they find a woman named Amelia Summerland who had suffered, who'd fallen into a state of locked-in syndrome, which is where your brain is perfectly fine,
Yeah.
but you cannot move anything on your body. So, which is
Yeah.
like which is a very real condition and is like terrifying to think about. And
Right.
she's ideal for this because they're like, we could, she's dying anyway, and we could use her brain and put it into this artificial body. And so they convince the husband to consent to that procedure, and they do it. But when they do, early on, she's like so flawed and so messed up, and he's like, I don't know what that thing is, but that is not my wife. And he like takes them to court to try and get the whole thing shut down. But as they argue about it, she continues to grow and develop and becomes more and more like the Amelia that she was before. And so it raises that question of, well, did they successfully, because her body died in the process of this procedure, did they successfully transfer Amelia Summerland as a person into this new form? Or is Amelia something else that has Amelia Summerland's memories and looks like her, but isn't actually her? And what I thought was really interesting was I didn't want it was originally a stage play called the Summerlin Project, and then it became a film, Amelia 2.0. And in both cases, I did not want it to say one way or the other. I liked the idea that it didn't offer that answer to the audience. It let the audience decide for themselves by looking at her and being like, and I remember when the play opened, every night there'd be people walking out who were like, that's not Amelia. That's like some weird thing. She died. And then there were other people who were like, no, that absolutely was her. And they had, and the husband had no right to argue that they should shut her off because she's a living thing. And it was really, and it would get into these really heavy philosophical discussions, and people would be on both sides of it. And it was very, very interesting. And so I was very happy that it provoked that kind of back and forth, that kind of conversation. So
Now,
it was a really fun project to work on, and I was really surprised at how big it became, because like I said, it started as a stage play that was performed in a basement theater in Cedar Rapids for audiences of like 90 people a night, and then it got picked up and it got brought to Theater Cedar Rapids, where all of a sudden it was performing for 500 people a night, and then it wound up becoming a film, and then the film project started really small, and then it started getting bigger, and it became this movie that had Ed Begley Jr. in it, and Kate Vernon from Battlestar Galactica, and like the guy from Ocean's 11 was in it, and like all these like big names started getting attached to it. And then it got made in Iowa, which was something that we were really, really happy about. We wanted to bring that project to Iowa, and in fact, it was set in Iowa, which people were like, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Because every movie that's about Iowa is about baseball and farms, and we want to do a movie that's about like technology, and it takes place in Iowa because we can." So yeah, it was a really cool project to work on. And what's kind of funny is that it came out and it had a theatrical release, and then it came out and it was it kind of faded away for a while, and then like about a year or so ago, the film got uploaded in its entirety to YouTube, and it's like it's found a new audience. Like, I mean, there's tons of comments on it, and it's very interesting. And in the comments, the same thing's happening. There's people in there who are debating about it, or debating about what they think Amelia was. And there's people who are like, "Oh, the screenwriter was, clearly he hates right wingers because he wrote, all of the, and they're quoting like the senator's comments." And then there were other people that were like, this movie is so like people were accusing me of being of like every political side under the sun, and I was like, oh, good, then I got it right, because that was actually, in my journalism days, that was considered a badge of honor. If working for a paper, if you got calls complaining that you were a right-wing rag, and you also got calls complaining that you were just a left-wing liberal mouthpiece, if you got an equal amount of both of those calls, you were doing your job. You were nailing it. And if you got too many from one side, then you'd be like, oh, okay, wait, are we slanting too far one way? Because we haven't not had as many complaints from this side. Maybe we need to check it. So yeah, so I was very, very. I mean, I would say that my journey, kind of going way back to what was my influence. I mean, I would say the way that I look at things as a journalist definitely informs how I write, even though I'm not doing journalism anymore. Writing a screenplay, I was very interested in. I don't want to tell the audience how to feel. I want them to be able to decide for themselves by me simply presenting the facts of the case and letting them weigh it.
I wonder I wonder what people would think if they found out that that's what you did. Besides when you're writing a screenplay, I wonder how surprised they would be to know that you were actually a journalism major, and that played a part into your writing your
Well,
story.
I did. The character of the senator, there was a friend of mine who was a minister with a church here in town. I sent the script to him, asking him to help me make sure that, because the character of the senator, who is actively fighting to get the project shut down, and is a very religious man, I went to my friend Jonathan and I was like, I do not want this to be stereotyped. I do not want this to be critical of him in any way. I want this to sound authentic to how a man of faith would comment on this situation. And Jonathan helped me a lot with that, and was like, yeah, I don't think he'd say this. He might say something more like this. And we went back and forth on it, with some of there's a character in it who is a TV journalist who is helping to kind of through some of the reports that she does, the character of Ada Allen, a friend of mine who is an anchor at KCRG TV9 in Cedar Rapids, I sent it to her and I was like, does this seem accurate? And there was one thing she wrote back on and was like, a reporter would not do this. This is way too sensational. She wouldn't do this. And I was like, okay, and I fixed it. So yeah, it was very helpful to be able to go to actual people who do the kind of work that the script was portraying and make sure that it was accurate to them. So
Did you
it
ever
was a,
sit out?
yeah.
Did you ever sit outside the theater without, just by yourself, or just without people knowing who you were? Did you ever sit outside the theater and listen to some of the discussions?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, and it was fascinating to me. I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved the fact that it was not cut and dry either side.
That must have really inspired you, though. I mean, after that, you got that. I mean, it was so cool how it happened. Here you go. You take it from a small town to a bigger town to the big screen. And it's a fine movie. I got to watch about a third of it, a quarter of it, a third of it. I'm trying to catch up with it, but I was very impressed with it. And it looked absolutely beautiful on screen. Um, it absolutely looked beautiful, and I was like impressed with the cast. I'm like, man, they got some hitters in here, and to tell the story, which is really important. Um, Now, but you, what do you like doing more as far as the performing part of it? Do you like writing, or is it all the same to you? Do you like writing, or do you like being in front of the camera, or you like being behind the camera, as far as the storytelling goes?
As far as the storytelling, I mean, I love to write. I've had people ask me if I want to direct. I have directed before. I'll do it when I have to, when I feel like I'm the only person that, like if I've written something that I'm like, yeah, I need to direct this just to make it clear, then I will. But I don't enjoy directing. Like I like it, every actor you talk to, they're like, oh, I really want to direct someday. I don't. Like I direct when I have to, but I have no ambition for it, and I don't enjoy doing it when I do it. I feel it feels like a chore. Like okay, this has to get directed. Somebody's got to do it. I guess I'll do it. But I don't like it. But writing is very different because I get to create that world. I would say one of the biggest adjustments you have to make as a writer between theater and film. In theater, the writer is God. In theater, you can't change one word of a script in theater without getting written permission from the rights holders and from the playwright. And that's, I mean, like schools have run into that issue when they've tried to change something. Like you can't, you don't do it. In film, very different story, man. Once you hand over the screenplay, like the hardest lesson to learn is that it's not yours anymore, and
Yeah,
that actors are going to want to change their lines. The director is going to decide that he has to do a rewrite, to make it his vision. And producers are going to come in and be like, well, can we get more of this? And we need to, and so, I mean, there's a famous story about the guy who wrote the screenplay for Gladiator. Um, like he wrote it and shepherded it through, and then once Ridley Scott got it, first thing Ridley Scott did was kick him off, bring in a bunch of other writers. They completely changed it, and they kept messing with it and messing with it until finally it was apparently it was like an incoherent mess. It was just a total disaster. And Ridley Scott finally brought the original writer back in, literally like I think 2 months before they were going to start shooting, and he came in and he looked at what they'd done, and he put some things back and fixed some stuff. And so because of that, he got back on the writing credits for the film. Before that had happened, he wouldn't have even been listed because so many writers had touched it after him. And that's just, I mean, that's just a fact of, when you're younger, you get mad about that, and then as you get older, you're like, okay, I get it. That's just how film works. I mean, unless you're a writer director who has full control over your stuff, as a general rule, if you're a screenwriter, you just got to know, hey, once you sell this, it ain't yours anymore, and who knows what it's going to look like by the time it comes out.
right, right. I think probably the most famous story that I know, and when I talk about quite a bit. Hi, Michelle. How are you? And I saw you earlier. Hi, Brene. How are you? Um, one story I remember right off the bat, probably one of the most famous films. It all depends how you see it. Either it's a masterpiece or it's just junk, and that was what Stanley Kubrick did with The Shining.
Oh yeah.
He
Th-
took that. He just to me, he just absolutely destroyed the story. You
Well,
know,
and that actually, that's a really interesting subject for debate, because on one hand, Kubrick made a super creepy movie. The Shining is a great horror film, and it will, like, there's all kinds of fascinating imagery in it. And yeah, Kubrick made the movie that he wanted to make. But if you're coming at it from the point of view of, hey, I really like Stephen King's original story, then you will hate that movie,
yeah,
because holy crap, Kubrick gutted it,
he did.
and King did in fact hate that movie.
Yep.
Um, there's a really interesting. I mean, it's a little too dark in here to see it, but behind me I've got like a wall full of Blu-rays, because yes, I still buy them,
Yeah, we
streaming,
do
whatever. I
too.
still buy my Blu-rays, and I've got one for True Romance, which was directed by Tony Scott, but it was also the first screenplay that Quentin Tarantino ever sold. And it's and there's a really interesting commentary track on there of Tarantino talking about how Tony Scott changed his ending. And he goes through, he's like, yeah, when they were Tony, he said that the director had told him, yeah, we're changing this, um, so that in the original screenplay, Christian Slater's character was killed at the end, but Tony Scott changed it, uh, so that he lived, and like did a bunch of, it just basically changed the last like 10 minutes of the film. And Quentin Tarantino said that he went to Tony Scott and he begged him not to do that. And he said, please, 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 please do what I wrote. And Tony Scott said, all right, I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to film your ending, and I'm going to film my ending. And then in the editing room, I'm going to decide which one I'm going to go with. And so, like, on the special features of the Blu-ray, you can, in fact, see Tarantino's original ending. And Tarantino talked about how uh, he said, um, I get it. He said, because the thing is that Tony Scott used the correct ending for the movie that Tony Scott made. I think that's the quote from
Mhm.
Quentin. Is that he said, if I had directed the film, I would have made the whole film overall darker, and there just would have been a different tone to it. He said, but the way that Tony Scott had directed that film, the ending he came up with made more sense for it. So he said, he said, I think Tony Scott made the right ending for the movie that Tony Scott made. And I thought that was a really interesting insight, because so many things do happen in the creative process when you're making a movie that can change what the original intent was when you wrote it. And if you're a writer director, you can recognize that that's happening and you can tweak the script as you go. But if not, if things are happening on set where the actors are taking it in a lighter direction, or you're getting a performance from somebody that just jumps off the screen and you realize that the movie wants to spend more time with them, or simply just the way things have gone, the ending just doesn't work anymore and you've got to tweak it. I mean, films are an organic process, and sometimes things happen that make the original script not work the way that it originally would have. And so, yeah, that's a good lesson, I think, for writers to learn, is that, hey, it's there's a movie you saw in your head because you controlled everything, but once you hand it over to someone else, there's a whole lot of variables that come into play.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why novelists have a hard time sometimes is
Oh,
because
absolutely,
of
absolutely. Well, and on top of that, novelists, if you were to make a novel into a film and not cut anything, usually those novels are going to be like an 8-hour movie. But in order to get it down into a 2-hour feature, a lot of stuff has to come out, and the decisions about what to cut can be very, very hard for a novelist to live with, because they're like, no, that was important, you needed that. Or if the novelist was like, I saw this character this way, and you cast Pauly Shore and I can't believe you've ruined my vision. um, Although I did think it was very interesting, Anne Rice talked about when Tom Cruise got cast as Lestat, and she threw a fit. She was like, that is not who I envisioned as Lestat. That's a terrible decision. And she was just livid about it. And when they had like a rough cut of the film, they sent it to her, and she watched it, and she wound up, I think, taking out a full page ad in the New York Times apologizing, because she thought that what Tom Cruise had done was so brilliant that she was like, I take back everything I said. He's actually fantastic in this role, even if it's not what I saw. What he does works so well for the character. So yeah, sometimes it's different from what a novelist sees. I will say that that was something that I learned when we were doing the stage production of the Summerlin project. I had in my mind who these characters were and how certain
Mhm.
scenes were supposed to go. And then I remembered as we were rehearsing it, I would see things happening on stage that I was like, that's not what I intended, but I like that better. And so when that would happen, I would seize upon it. I remember that like the original scene where Carter came to see Amelia in the hospital while she's got locked in syndrome. And the original way I'd written it, it was, he gave her this long, heartfelt monologue about how Amelia's mother had died that day, and he was telling her about it. And it just was like very heavy and very like, oh, and it's like, God, like as if this play wasn't heavy enough. Really? We're going to throw that in there? And then I remember that when we were rehearsing it, I told the actor playing Carter, I said, you know, this scene right now takes place on a really bad day for Carter and Amelia. But he comes to see her every day, and he's been doing this for 3 years. So improvise for me a good day. Show me what happens when Carter, just comes to see Amelia and he's in a good mood. What do you do? And the actor who did that, he wound up improvising. It was beautiful. He came in and he was like joking with her, and he was talking about like tabloid magazines and just being goofy. And then he was like, "Do you want to dance with me?" In the way the scene was originally written was that at the end of all this heavy stuff, he then played the Satie song that later Amelia plays on the piano. And what the actor wound up doing in this improvised scene was he was like, "You want to dance with me? All right." And he puts that song on, and he improvised this whole thing where even though his wife is like unable to move and lying in a bed, he figured out a way to like pull her up off the bed just enough that he could like dance with her. And it was just this absolutely beautiful thing. And he finished with it. And I remember me and everybody else in the cast were just sitting there like, and I was like, I'm going to have a new scene for you tomorrow. And I went home that night and I rewrote that entire scene based on what I'd seen. And it was like so much better than what I had originally written, thanks to that actor. And so, and again, that goes back to what we were talking about before of anytime there's an opportunity to inject liveliness and humor into a really heavy thing. And that was a perfect opportunity. And I believe that scene is in the film as well, but that all came from that one night where we were just playing around and the actors came up with something better than what I had originally done.
What's it like dealing with the director? I mean, is it up to the director overall though? Like you said, you took that idea and you went home with it. But
Well,
do
in
you have
that
any
case, I was able to do that because I directed the original production, so I had that authority. I was like, "Yep, we're gonna go home and have a chat with the writer and tell him to do what the director wants," which in that case was me. Um, when Theater Cedar Rapids did it as a main stage show, I no longer had that control.
Right.
They did let me sit in on rehearsals, and from time to time the director would be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I think we tweaked a few things and cut a few lines that felt a little like unnecessary. But for the most part, like it was like, no, it's not mine anymore. Hands off. And then the same thing when the film was made, there were actually a lot of changes that were made to the script that I did not make. And again, that was just that's that part of the process.
How did you feel about that?
Oh, hated it. Um, you know, but it was a lesson. It was a good lesson in how that works.
Yeah. Did you end up
And it is a
enough?
painful lesson, but you come to understand. You're like, okay. I mean, if you don't want anybody to mess with your words, don't write for film. Be a novelist
I think
or
maybe
be a stage playwright, but don't write for film because people are going to mess with it. It's just going to happen. And if you're too precious with your work that you won't let anybody do that, film is too collaborative of a medium. You don't belong there.
I think what happened with in King's case, I think because he has so much success with Carrie, he had success with Carrie, and then I think he ended up. I think if I'm not mistaken, Firestarter. I mean, I think there's a couple of movies that he did before The Shining came out, and I think he had success there too. Because people's going like Stephen King. Stephen King. Um,
Mhm.
I think he was used to that success. And and he even told Kubrick that he says, I don't like what you've done, but let me take a run at it. And he went and he wrote a screenplay, and he came back, and Kubrick says, well, no, it's all right. I'm gonna go with what I'm gonna see anyway. But at least he gave him a chance. At least he gave him an opportunity to write it out. Um, I'm just thinking to myself how just that's just got to be really, really tough, though. To write a story, and then I know that's what happens to screenwriters. You write the story and you turn it in, and you're right. They could walk through that thing 5 or 6 times, and by the time the movie's shot, the only thing written by you is your name on the front page, but everything else is in there has been changed around so much that it's not even like the original movie anymore.
Yeah, and it happens. But I will say too that, like I said, it was a lesson. And I wound up working with Adam. Adam Orton was the director of Amelia 2.0, and I wound up working with Adam again just this past year. We did In the Silence, which was actually the first project we'd ever collaborated on together. 15 years ago, we did In the Silence when I had only done like a couple of films, and Adam had only directed a couple. And so it was an opportunity for us to work together on this story, and we filmed it back in 2008, and I wound up finding a copy of it last year, and I sent it to him, and we were just kind of laughing about it. We were like, "Oh man, we used to suck back then. Look at this thing," and we were joking around about it, and I can't remember which one of us it was that said, "Man, imagine what we could do with this concept today."
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah. And then at one point, one of us was like, well, why don't we? And we wound up really quickly putting it together. We were able to get back. A good friend of mine, Tim Arnold, was in the original film, and he came back, and I basically took the story and completely rethought it and wrote a new screenplay, and we put together the shoot. And I mean, like the one that we did in 2008, I think it was shot on a Canon HV20 mini DV camcorder, and the one that we did this year was shot on a Red Epic Dragon. Like the difference in equipment and in experience and knowledge was like astronomical. And but it was still like a return to that same story. But it was a good I mean, Adam and I collaborated on that film in a way that was much smoother than our collaboration on Amelia, because both of us had learned a lot from that process, and we had learned how to communicate with each other, and we learned a lot more about the give and take that goes into working on a film. And as a result, I think that we were able to make it very smoothly. The whole film, from concept to filming to a completed version, I think took about 6 months, which was crazy. And it had its theatrical premiere last month and was really well received. And we've got like 3 screenings of it coming up this month. And it's been really fun seeing how it came together. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that movie really represents how far I personally have come as an actor, as a writer, as a filmmaker. I look at it versus stuff that I did a decade ago, and I'm like, wow, this is it feels good to know that you continue to learn, and you continue to grow as an artist as you make stuff.
Yeah, sometimes that doesn't always happen. Let me read a comment here that Michael left. He says Rob was in my first ever film, and my first feature. Mostly because I'm curious. Could you ask Rob to describe the differences between sets? Uh, about what he thought was the best thing about both. So let's go into that, into the silence, and you should have killed me. What are 5 big differences between the two sets that you can share with us?
Well, wait. Does Michael want to know the difference between All Roads End and You Should Have Killed Me, or the difference between In the Silence and You Should Have Killed Me? Because if he's talking about the first film I did with him, that would be All Roads End.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that must be it.
Okay.
From Michael's
No,
first
well,
movie.
the difference will scale, for one thing. I mean, All Roads End was like me and one other actor. And then at the very beginning of the movie, that actor had a scene with the actress playing his wife. But beyond that, that whole movie was me and this other dude. Um, and the crew was Michael and his camera guy, and I think we had a sound guy there. And that was it. It was very small, and a lot of the movie took place in a car. So we were like, it just everything was very small. Michael also was a little more. I don't want to say nervous. It's not the right word, but I'll put it this way. When we made You Should Have Killed Me, you could tell that Michael felt a lot more confident about his choices and a lot more willing to tell people what to do. That as a director, he was kind of like, with All Roads End, it was his first movie, and he was kind of figuring out what his voice was. By the time we got to You Should Have Killed Me, he was a lot more self-assured about what that voice was and about what film he wanted to make. There was also a lot more people there. I mean, You Should Have Killed Me had a much bigger cast. There were, and I also, I mentioned before that that Jeeves doesn't play a really big role in that film, and I actually filmed a lot of my stuff toward the end. So by the time I came on set, what I found was a lot of guys who had been working together on this film for a good amount of time at this point, and I almost felt like the intruder. That like I was coming into this like family that they, at this point they'd all been working together and they had a shorthand and they had a history. And now here's this weird British dude who just shows up. I mean, they were great, but All Roads End, that felt very small, and it just felt like, this little core group of people making this movie. You Should Have Killed Me felt much bigger, and I felt like I was joining something that was already in progress, where I was with All Roads End from the beginning.
But did you feel when you walked on the set though? I mean, you felt like everything was being controlled. Everything was like a fine machine. It was like
Yeah, it
no.
was very efficient. I guess the other thing that makes them different was we filmed All Roads End. Um, God, that was during the first year of the pandemic. And so there was a real nervousness that hung over everything. Like everybody was trying to be really good about COVID protocols. And I mean, I want to say we were filming that thing only like 3 or 4 months after the country shut down. And so, we were all being really good about COVID testing, and we were all really nervous. Um, and that really helped that our group was so small. It was like, 3 or 4 dudes making this movie. And so I felt a lot less nervous about, whereas by the time we got to You Should Have Killed Me, the pandemic wasn't over, but we were a lot further into it. And there was, there wasn't as much like fear hanging over the set. I mean, I can't put it into strong enough terms that the first time you stepped onto a film set after everything shut down in the pandemic was a scary thing. I mean, it was you didn't want to get COVID, and you're seeing people for the first time since this whole thing started, and uh, it was a little weird. I remember that we had started filming that, and I mean, I mentioned MG White. I was working on a movie with him that was being filmed in Sioux City and in Nebraska, called To Live Again. And that movie also, we'd started filming it before the pandemic, and then everything like stopped. And then, when people started trying to get projects going again with like, big COVID protocols in place, you know, I was driving to Waterloo to make All Roads End, and I was driving to Sioux City to do To Live Again. Um, and not gonna lie, it was a scary time. It was just a weird time, and we got stuff done and we made good work, but it was weird. It's much more fun to make movies now than it was in 2020.
That's for sure. It always amazes me when I find out that there were a lot of projects that were being filmed. We thought everything was shut down, and then next thing you know, you hear people saying, "Oh no, we never stopped working. We just worked with a little bit less. We worked with less and we worked more careful, but we're
Yeah.
still creating." Um, so so after Amelia 2.0, you got that was your that's definitely something to be very proud of. So let's talk a little bit about Into the Silence that we talked about a little bit. So tell us about the story of Into the Silence. It sounded like how you described it to me. it's actually sort of sounding like a family film, like a mystery, and you're going like,
If
yeah.
somebody mistakenly thinks that In the Silence is a family film, you mentioned like sitting outside and hearing what people say afterward. That would be me. I'd be like, oh, I can't wait for this. Yeah, that's not a family film. I mean, it's not. Uh, it's the easiest way to describe the scariness level of In the Silence is if you're okay with The Sixth Sense, then you'll be okay with In the Silence. Um, the story of it is there's I played David, who is married to like he and his wife Sam. At the beginning of the film, they arrive on a farm in Iowa. I know, farm in Iowa. I did it. I finally broke down and did the Iowa movie. But they come to a farm in Iowa, well, a farmhouse in Iowa that David has bought sight unseen from a classifieds listing because and he's moved from Chicago, and it's like clear that he's just trying to leave something behind, and so gets to this house, and almost immediately weird things start happening out there, and when they go into town, people in town are like, "Oh, you bought the Ward House? Well, there's like some stories about that place," and so there's there's clearly something weird going on out there, and then this guy named Charles, who is like he was very an odd dude. Um, and he's like, "Hey, I can help you. I used to work that land," and so and he clearly knows something about that place. And so as the film goes on, that's the question: is what's happening out there? What is David trying to get away from? And is that thing now there? So it's it's a bit of a mystery. It's a bit of a suspense, and it was really fun to shoot it where we did because there's this beautiful, um, this absolutely beautiful farmhouse that's just outside of like in between Cedar Rapids and Mount Vernon. And when we scouted the location for it, it was like I think it was like late July, early August. And so all of our scout footage, everything out there was just green. But by the time we went out to shoot, every like all the colors were changing for fall, and so like it's just a beautiful movie to look at. The cinematography is incredible. The back, like it's gorgeous. And then when we went out there like a month later to do some pickup shots and some interior stuff, everything was dead. So like we just by pure luck got the most beautiful location we could at like the perfect time of year. If we'd started filming 2 weeks earlier or 2 weeks later, we wouldn't have gotten it.
I would think Iowa would be a beautiful state to shoot in, though.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, and it offers a lot of flexibility. Everybody, if you want to farm, sure, you're gonna find tons of them in Iowa. But if you need cityscapes, go to Des Moines. If you go like right in the heart of downtown Des Moines, you can have that pass for a number of like larger cities. Or go a little farther over to Omaha. I shot a film this past summer called Mania with Jude Rollins, and we actually filmed the first part of that film in New York. Like last fall, we flew out to New York and we filmed because like the beginning of the film takes place in New York, and then the action moves to Iowa. So we were out in New York for a few days of shooting, and then there were a few things that needed to look like New York, but that we weren't able to shoot there. And so we doubled an office building in downtown Cedar Rapids and used it as an office building in New York, and it blends right in with all the stuff that was actually shot in New York. It works. So yeah, there's a lot of you can make a lot of really cool films in Iowa and almost any genre. And with the Four Seasons, actually that was a funny thing that happened on In the Silence was we were filming like our shoot I think was September to October, and I had said something to Adam. There's a scene where my character is standing at a gravesite, and I had said to him, "Oh, it'd be really cool if, like, when I wrote this, I saw it taking place with snow on the ground, but with where we're shooting it, like the time of year, there's no way." And then there was a morning that we woke up, and there was like a weird freak snowstorm that rolled into Iowa that morning, and it covered everything in snow, and it was super cold. But the forecast said that by the afternoon, temperatures were going to go back up to like 50, and it was all going to melt off. And I called at him and I was like, what are you doing? And because it was just all that it would involve was him having to shoot and me like being it, like we both were at work and we took our lunch breaks and went over to this cemetery and filmed those shots really quick. And it looks like it's the middle of January, but we got lucky. So yeah, Iowa's got weird weather, so you can shoot all kinds of stuff here.
Uh, do people like I know it's not a really huge community, but do you find people coming to you and asking you for advice and wisdom, and because you have experience, especially when you got a movie like Amelia that was end up having like a big cast to a well-known cast. Do you find yourself being asked a lot of times for your advice and for your opinions,
I,
and
I
how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of people will ask me for script feedback. They'll send me their scripts and be like, "Hey, can you look at this?" I do if I have time. The first time I ask anybody who says that to me is, "Do you actually want feedback or not?" Because there are people who are like, "Hey, help me make this better," and then there are people who are like, "Read this and tell me how great it is." And you got to gauge that because nothing's worse than reading a script and offering somebody like honest constructive feedback on how to make it better, and they just get so offended that you didn't think it was just absolutely perfect, and they'll say, "Oh, what do you think of this?" But they don't really want to know what you think. They just want you to tell them how great they are.
Yeah.
Those are difficult people to work with, but the people who actually are like, "Hey, no, help me make this better." Michael's actually one of those guys. Michael has sent me his scripts a few times and been like, "What do you think?" uh and I've given him honest feedback, and he's used some of what I've told him, and other stuff he's like, "No, I want it the way it is," and that's cool. I love that. I love having that back and forth with people where you can help. I find for me as a writer that when people ask me questions about what I've written, like, "Why did you say this?" or "Why did you do this?" or "I don't understand this moment. Why'd you do it?" that one of two things will happen. Either I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. That doesn't work. I'm going to change this." Or if if I have to justify it to them, if I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm doing it because of this," what it does is it solidifies in my mind why I wanted that moment to happen, or why I wanted that character to say what they did. And so in the course of defending it, I'm like, "Nope, no, I should clarify this more because I really feel strongly about this." Um, so that's helpful. As far as acting, one of the biggest things that I get is people constantly ask me, where am I finding out about acting opportunities in Iowa?
Yeah,
Um,
that would be. I remember asking that with Tim Connery a couple of years back, and because back then I just thought it would just be a really small circle. It's like how big is the industry back there? And he
well,
worked out of he worked out of
there's
the
a few pages. Like there's like Iowa Film and Media, Tri-State Film, LaFemme. There's like a Facebook pages where people will post casting calls, audition things, and you know, so that's a really good one. One of the things that I'm actually kind of proud of is everything I've accomplished up to this point. Every role that I've found, everything that I've done has been without the help of an agent or an agency. I am completely responsible for finding every role that I have found, and I've never, I've never had an agency be like, "Hey, we want to hire you." No, never happened. But I've still found
what,
tons of work, and
what kind what,
so
what
the
kind of
biggest thing I
what
tell
kind of
people is, just keep responding to those things, audition for stuff because it gets posted all the time. The
what,
other
what
thing is that you build relationships. You audition for somebody, and either you audition for them and you're not right for that role, but they remember you, and then later on they're like, "Hey, I was thinking you'd be really good for this," or you work on a film. This has actually happened to me a bunch of times where I've worked on a film and there's somebody on that film who is running sound or working in some assistant capacity, but they come up to you during a break in shooting and they're like, "Hey, I'm actually working on this script that I want to direct next year. Would you have any interest in being part of it?" And so, and I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so I've had a number of projects come to me that way, that I just met somebody on set who they weren't in the director or writer role on that project, but they were working on something. And because they had gotten to work with me on this project, they were like, "Hey, you want to come in for this?" And so, yeah, a lot of stuff's come my way as a result of that.
it's really word of mouth.
Yeah.
What happened? What was the response after Amelia 2.0 went commercial? It went out to got broke out of Iowa and it played nationwide. What kind of response did you get? Did anybody come around sniffing around, seeing what else you had in your writer's box, or did anybody ever approach you about adapting another story or writing a screen more screenplays?
Me,
What kind of
no, because film is a director's medium. Um, People, as a general rule, don't watch a movie and go, "Oh, I got to work with the writer of that thing." In film, directors are, you know, if somebody sees a movie that they like, their first response is either "I love those actors" or "I love that director." So, no, I mean, I wouldn't say. I'd say that. Um, for me, what was really cool about it was that it gave me the opportunity. Well, first of all, like I said, I learned a lot from the process, but it also gave me the opportunity to pitch a follow up, which was then also done at Theater Cedar Rapids, called Aurora. Um, because the story at the end of Amelia 2.0 was kind of open ended. And, one of the things that I really wanted to do, I actually, after Summerlin Project was produced in Iowa, it wound up getting other productions. It wound up being produced at other theaters around the country. And I actually went to see a production of it in Kansas City, and this was after the film had come out. And I'll be honest, I was a little Amelia'd out. It was kind of just like, between working on the play and then the film and all of that, I was like, I'm done, and I was like, I went to see Kansas City's production just because I knew somebody who was involved with it. And I was like, okay, I'll go see it. And my wife and I went out there, and you know, and maybe it helped that I was seeing a production that I had absolutely nothing to do with, being played by actors I'd never seen before, and it kind of gave me a different perspective on it. And I remember a question occurred to me after seeing that had never happened on any of the other ones I'd worked on, which was, if this all really happened and Amelia finds herself at the end of that story where she's learned that, everything that happened with her husband, and she's learned that her original body was destroyed, but she also learns that now uh, duplicates of her are being manufactured using duplicates of her brain. um, that it's like, well, what legal rights would she have as something who the company is claiming is um, a successfully transplanted human? Is she considered a human? Does she still have the rights that she had before this all happened? Or is she considered a product? Does she belong to Wesley Enterprises, the company that made her? And so I looked at my wife, who's an attorney, and we're driving, bear in mind, we're driving back from Kansas City to Cedar Rapids, which is like a 7-hour drive or something like that. And I said, okay, as an attorney, if Amelia Summerlin came into your office tomorrow and was like, help me, what legal strategy would you have for her? What would you argue should be done? And Megan had a lot of ideas on it, and I was like, okay, yeah. And then I said, okay, flip side, what if Wesley Enterprises as a corporation came to you and said, we've got this rogue product that's claiming it's a person, and what do we do? What rights do we have? And it opened a lot of interesting questions, but the most important question I thought it opened, and one of the things that, in looking back on Amelia 2.0 and the original Summerlin project, one thing that I felt bad about as a writer was the character who had the least amount of input or agency on what happens to Amelia Summerlin was Amelia Summerlin. I felt like, I want to know what Amelia thinks. And the original, it touched on that a little bit. She talked about it. There's like one big scene where she kind of blows up at everybody, but for the most part, it's all these other people arguing about what's going to happen to her. And
Yeah.
so what Aurora, the follow up, allowed me to do was give Amelia the power to decide her own fate, by basically taking on Wesley Enterprises through a legal path, and it opened all. And in the same way that the first one, I tried to make it so that it didn't tell you for sure, and audiences could decide one way or the other. Aurora did the same thing. Because Wesley Enterprises makes some really compelling arguments about how much, the money that they spent to develop this product, the fact that they can build it, the fact that they could make as many copies of Amelia as they want to, and you cannot give human rights to a machine. You cannot do that because it opens up a really scary can of worms. But on the flip side, you've got Amelia arguing that, according to Wesley Enterprises, they did a medical procedure on her and she survived that medical procedure, according to them, which means she's still a person and that they have no right to her intellectual property. And it was this really, really cool, and as a writer, I found myself like one day I'd feel more like one side and one day I'd feel more like the other, which was how I felt on the first one. And that was a really cool feeling to get, which is all a really long answer to making the movie. I feel like made it possible for me to do that, because when I then went to Theater Cedar Rapids and said, hey, I want to pitch an idea for a follow-up to this, that because of the success of the first one and the film had just come out, they were all about it. And so I got to produce it there. So yeah, the movie definitely helped me on that front, as far as like helping to get another, helping to continue Amelia's story, which was a really cool thing as a writer. Aurora didn't go nearly as far as the first one did, but that's okay, because for me, I felt like I got to finish the story that I started, and so that was pretty cool.
I remember a similar story they ran on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and has some of the same ethical questions. And to me, it's like, back then, and back then it's like, and there's also before that, Asimov wrote, I think he wrote I, Robot.
Yeah, and I think I know the Star Trek episode you're talking about. Is that the one where Data like made a robot, and then it's funny because there, I remember actually when Summerlin Project came out, and then when Amelia 2.0 was coming out, I was like terrified every time. I think there was a movie called Transcendence with Johnny Depp. Like every time they would announce that there was a movie that involved robotics or people's mind being uploaded, I'd be like, please tell me it's not the same story. And it's not. It'd usually be like there'd be hints of it, but there'd be something that'd be just different enough. And now, I mean, now there's like tons of, especially with the advent of AI. Now there's tons of stories about that stuff. But the cool thing was that the Summerlin Project got written in 2011, and I think that it was a newer idea then than it would be now.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit more about Into the Silence, because we don't have that much time left, but I want to talk a little bit about that because that's coming up.
Yeah.
So where the story come from? I mean, where's the genesis come from? Like, did you plan on making this into did you plan on making it into the horror film? Did you, because The Sixth Sense is sort of it's not only it's a supernatural, but it does take a look at the family dynamics. We see how Malcolm interacts with his wife. We see how Cole interacts with his mother. It definitely has horrific elements into it, but it really is about relationships at a crossroads. Toni Collette's taking her son, seeing that her son is a lot different than most kids, and he's not just a little child anymore. Malcolm sees about some of the mistakes that he's made in dealing with his wife, and he wishes he could go back there and fix some of them. Did and to me, being isolated out in a wooded farm like that, I'm just imagining the noise.
Yeah. Oh, well, funny story about that. So we were actually filming out there one night, and all of a sudden, all of these coyotes just start, like a huge amount of them, and it was pitch black out there. And so we knew they were close. And based on how much noise they were making, we knew there were a lot of them. And at one point, we all just stopped because it was like really building up. And Adam just let the sound recorder go. And he recorded about like 2 minutes of these coyotes just going to town. And then they all stopped. And so and so in the actual film, you hear these coyotes out there, and that's not like that's actual sound that we recorded on that set, that location. And we've had people out there like, did you guys dub those in? We're like, no, that was there. That was them. And so that was and in fact, I think we incorporated a few references to coyotes in the script after that happened, because I was like, oh my God, well, they're here. Let's mention them. Yeah, so I guess something that Amelia 2.0 and In the Silence have in common is that in both cases, they look like a genre film, but they're really not. Amelia
Yeah.
2.0 on its surface looks like a science fiction film, but it's really not. For one thing, it's dealing with technology that's actually a lot closer. I mean, I really made an effort to try and make it as realistic as I could to what's actually being done right now. Actually, to the point that I had to remove a bunch of stuff from the script because people early on were like, Rob, you don't have to explain how this works because we don't care. And I was like, no, but you don't understand. Like, this could actually happen. And I have laid out how it could happen. And
Right.
I took a lot of that detail out. But I was trying to go for realism because, like I said, I wanted to tell a story about trying to bring back somebody that you love who passed away. And the science was only a means with which to do that. But the story was not about science fiction. And in the same way, In the Silence, I mean, there's things about it that are a little spooky, but that's more the atmosphere of it. The story that it tells is a very human one, and it's very much about grief and loss. And a lot of that becomes clear in the last like 10 minutes of the film. And actually, one of the things I was really proud of, it was after the premiere screening, that was the first time anybody had seen it outside of our creative team. And I asked around, like, did you see the ending coming? And there were so many people who did not, or they figured out what was about to happen about 30 seconds before it did. And I was like, good. That means that we told a story that felt authentic, and that although it surprised people, it did it in a way that didn't feel cheap. And so, and actually, The Sixth Sense kind of motivated us, not in the way that you would think. Everybody talks about The Sixth Sense and the big twist, but okay, whatever. Bruce Willis, yeah, sure, fine, that happens. What I love the most about The Sixth Sense, and Adam and I talked about this. What I love the most about that movie is that it's a suspense horror film until the last 10 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes of that movie are this heart wrenching,
Yeah.
beautiful family drama. Like that scene between Haley Joel Osment and Toni Collette in the car where he's telling her about how her mother wanted her to know that she came and watched her dance. Like
Yeah.
your freaking heart falls out of your chest, and it's like, wait a minute, this is a horror movie. What is going on? I love the fact that that movie just took the conventions of a horror film and went, yeah, we're going to do something different now.
Yeah.
And I think that we try to do that with In the Silence, not in the same way, but in that same way of hey, you thought you were seeing this kind of movie, but it's actually going over here.
It's sometimes people with horror films too. It's funny because I watched one yesterday. I watched a movie, an anthology film called Southbound, and one thing that horror people would like to do, they always feel like if you watch most of the horror films, they're always tagging on a sequel. It's always
Mhm.
there's never a clean cut. It's always like, at the end you get the people surviving, and then next thing you know, the person's, maybe it's a possession film or something like that, and at the end, they exercise them at the end, and then at the end of the movie, you see that they're still possessed, or they're still the creature or whatever. And it's like, I just hate that forced on shit. I like the fact that idea of like, hey, you can tell a story like The Sixth Sense did, and you can end it. You
Mhm.
can end the story as it is. You don't need to tie it on. And I was watching that yesterday, and it always doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. It's all right to go ahead and show a tiny little bit of light.
Mhm.
I think people sort of miss that in horror films today. I really
Yeah.
do. I think there's a growing audience that's like, I see what you're trying to do. I know you're trying to frighten us. I know you're trying to make everything super powerful, but at the same time it's okay to have a sliver of light out, and
Yeah.
and a little bit of arc of light. I mean, even look at You Should Have Killed Me.
Mhm.
At the end of the movie, we got the two friends sitting there talking. I
Yeah.
mean, they could have been shot up. They could have been shot up in the final shootout, but they didn't. They ended up sitting there at a restaurant, enjoying each other's company and talking and joking around. And it's like, it made the movie end on a satisfying note. You know,
Well, no matter what genre you're looking at, the thing that makes it really important is that the audience cares about the people they're following. That they have to have a reason to care. If you care about those people, it will make, in a horror film, it will make the danger that they face that much more frightening. I see a lot of movies where it feels like the director hates the characters or
Yes.
doesn't care about them, or they only exist for the purpose of doing this set piece. And as a result, you become really detached from it. And you're like, I don't care. The best comedies are that way, where like you genuinely care what happens to these people. And so it's funny. Comedies where it's just mean humor the whole time, you're like, yeah, okay, it's funny, but then you forget about it 5 minutes later. Whereas a comedy that's built on really rich, well-drawn characters, and the humor comes from a very familiar human place, it is going to resonate way more, and you're going to remember it long after you've seen it. And I think that's something that all good films try to do is give you a story that you care about, and people in that story that you care about. Actually, one that you were mentioning The Cross earlier, and I got to see the premiere of that a couple of weeks ago. And one of the you know the on its face, it's telling a story that's intriguing just when you hear about it, because it's about it's a true life story of a French family that tried to open a restaurant in Des Moines, or not, sorry, not in Des Moines. I forget where in Iowa, in a small town in Iowa, and they wind up getting driven out by the Iowa chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. And when I first heard about this, I was like, okay, wait, first of all, the Ku Klux Klan was active in Iowa in the 1920s. Well, holy crap, they sure were. And not only that, Michael actually dug up a poster that they use as part of the film, that's an actual poster from a Klan community event. It was like a parade, and like you read the poster and it's like, kids welcome, we are inviting everybody, and it reads like a 4th of July carnival flyer, and yet you're like, but it's the Klan, what the heck? And so it's that's a heavy story, but the world is filled with fact-based historical films that still don't grab you. They don't make you feel much other than, oh, that's interesting, I learned something. But one of the things that The Cross does really, really well is it has these 3 daughters in the family, which I remember the first time I read the script, I was like, oh man, this movie's going to live and die on finding a couple of really good child actors in Iowa. And if you don't succeed at that, this movie's going to be painful to watch, because nothing's worse than bad child actors trying to do a scene. And they found really, really strong actresses to play like this. And so you wind up genuinely emotionally investing in this family because of their dynamic and because of the charisma of the performers, and that this 3-dimensional portrait gets painted of these people, so that then when the Klan starts doing what they're doing, you care a whole lot more. And unfortunately, if you go in already knowing the actual story, you know what's going to happen. If you go in not knowing the actual story, the ending, you're going to be like, what? Like, because you think, oh, they're going to beat the Klan and this is going to be great. They don't, spoiler alert, they don't beat the Klan. You did not beat the Klan in 1920s Iowa. And it's just, but a movie like that, in order to make that story resonate with people, you have to paint characters that the audience cares about. And I think that that's one of the things that The Cross does very, very well, which is a tribute to both the people playing the family, and to Michael, and to Shelby Hagerton, his co-director. Shelby is Shelby's I mentioned Michael, but Shelby also is like a great talent. I've gotten to do a couple of films with Shelby, and so sometimes people are like, "Why are you driving all the way over to Sioux City or Nebraska to make a movie?" And I'm like, "Well, because sometimes if you read a script that you really like, or if there are people who you like working with, you suck it up and you do it, because it's what you got to do." So yeah, I just think that's really, really important in any film, is to create people that you care about.
I agree. I agree. All right. That is going to run us out. We stayed a little over, but I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to Rob for coming out today. We could have kept going for this for sure. So we'll definitely have to have you come back. Um, terrific filmmaker, terrific writer, terrific actor. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your stories. I'm looking forward to seeing The Cross. I admit I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to seeing in the Silence. I love those types of movies, so I will definitely be front and foremost when they both come out our way.
Well, and there's another film I'm actually about to start work on in a couple of weeks. That's going to be really exciting for me because if you know who Max Allan Collins is, he's the writer of Road to Perdition, the Tom Hanks film, and he has written a like a film noir 40s detective adaptation of A Christmas Carol, except that instead of it being Ebenezer Scrooge, it's like this private eye who gets visited by the ghost of his former partner. But I've never worked with Max Allan Collins before, and I got cast in that film, and we're going to start working on it in like 3 more weeks, and I'm super excited to see how that one goes.
I'm trying to think of what superheroes that he's done. I know he's written several screenplays.
Oh yeah, no, he's like the most prolific writer. It's crazy how many books that dude has done, and
Yeah,
he's like made multiple films, and yeah, he's a man of many talents.
yes, definitely. I read a lot of his works when I was much younger, so I've been a fan of his work for years. Yeah, that's a very exciting. And will you after the movie wraps up and gets ready to prep up, ready to drop, we'll have to have you come back so you can share with us your experiences on the film.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Uh, we have all. We're gonna put all your. All, I know you're not much of a social media person, but you have a Facebook group and you have a couple of Facebook groups for your films or pages, and you also have a movie database. We'll put that down as well.
Yeah,
Is there any
yeah. I'm a pretty active. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I just don't mess with Instagram. I just don't care.
Yeah.
But Facebook, if you have Facebook, you can get a hold of me pretty easy.
All right, we're gonna do that. We're gonna put that down so you guys can come over and hang out and talk to Rob. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a question or two. One thing when you mentioned about doing the scripts, though, I was curious about that. When people send you stuff unsolicited, how do you protect yourself from like them coming back there and claiming that like let's just I mean I always thought that no, you weren't supposed to take anything unsolicited.
Well, first of all, I don't produce anything other than stuff I've written. So there's no danger that somebody's going to send me a script and then I'm going to like take it and make that movie without their permission. It'll never happen.
Right.
The other thing is that usually those things come from people I already know. Like if somebody that I've never met, never seen before messages me out of the blue and is like, "Hey, will you read my script?" I'm going to be like, "I have no idea who you are." No. But if a friend of mine or a colleague of mine then sure, absolutely. Because I've grown up in an environment, I've been part of so many script workshops and so many like groups where people. I mean, anybody who's been writing for a while figures out that when you have other people weighing in, it makes your work so much better because people think of things you won't think of, and if you have a really good level of trust with them, they aren't afraid to tell you when something works and when something doesn't work. And I'd way rather hear that from a colleague than from an audience after it's been finished. I would love to have somebody early in the process who I trust be like, dude, that's a mistake. Don't do that. And or better yet, hey, that thing that you're doing, I mean, it kind of works, but what if you tried this? It might make it way better. Like that's so helpful as a writer. And yeah, so as long as I've got that kind of relationship with people, I'm happy to do that for them. And I really appreciate it when they do that for me.
All right. And with that, I want to thank the chat for coming out and hanging out with us tonight. I appreciate it so much. We will be back tomorrow night with Heather Harlow. She will be here. And then on Thursday, we'll be back again with our good friend Tracy Hutchins. I'm doing a YouTube creator on Thursday. She runs a beauty channel. I'll talk to anybody. That's right. Um, Thank you so much for coming out, Rob. Stay right where you're at. And to the chat, I will talk to you guys tomorrow night at 8 o'clock when we welcome in Heather Harlow. Thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you soon. And have a great night. Peace.